Hi guys, thank you for logging on. Welcome to our masterclass. I'm Dragan, this is Amanda. Today we'll be discussing investing in established properties. So first and foremost, let's get started with the housekeeping and disclaimers. Amanda, over to you.
All right. So just before we begin, we want to make it really clear that we don't replace your professionals, your broker, your accountant. All those people don't become redundant when you start doing these sorts of things. They become part of your team. So we're another member of that same team as your buyer's agents or investment property advisors. So if we just pop there to the legal disclaimer, what we're saying there is that we haven't taken an assessment of your personal situation, your finances, your preferences. The content contained in this masterclass is general information sort of pitched at an average or pitched at a broader audience and what you as an individual might represent. So the information that you gain today, apply it to your situation yourself. If you want our guidance on applying it to yourself, then you can book in a call with Dragan and we'll pop up a link in a moment for you to do that. But what we want to make clear is that this is not individual advice. This is an education session.
In general.
Yeah. It's an education session, information gather and build the foundation of knowledge so that when you do come to someone like Dragan or your accountant or your broker, you can ask all the right questions because you are a little bit better informed.
Yep.
So this is part of our Spotlight series of masterclasses where each topic has a twin. So this topic here, investing in established properties in established suburbs, pairs with our masterclass on purchasing brand new and off the plan. So if you're grappling between whether to buy brand new or established, then you're in the right place. Today we're focusing on established, but I do strongly recommend that if you're sort of on the fence or battling it out between the two, that you also watch the masterclass on buying brand new or off the plan, because people tend to lean more one way or the other. So critically analyze both before making a decision and deciding what's right for you.
Definitely.
Bearing in mind, you can work in collaboration with Dragan to do that as well. So I've got the QR code on the screen.
Yep, QR codes here, guys. So we will have that at the end of the masterclass. So don't feel stressed. You need to do it now. It's here if you want it. Jump on QR code or just go to propertysessions.com.au/15. Book a call with me, even if it's just just for a chat to have a guidance of what where you want to go, where you're unsure, whatever you need. Just I'm here to help. So book that call in and we'll have a chat.
Yeah, for sure.
So a little bit about myself. So if you guys haven't seen the other masterclass, the beginning, I've as a kid, I grew up in commission housing out in Redfern in Sydney. I'm not sure if people are familiar where Redfern is if you're not from Sydney. Growing up, not having where the rest of the kids around me did have, great parents. They loved me to bits. They meant the best for me. But obviously, more of a working class family immigrants. They came over from former Yugoslavia, which is now separated. Some people know what I'm talking about. Obviously, having that burning desire growing up with, as a kid of not having, I didn't want the same things for my kids growing up. So I've, found ways to, how to sort of achieve, how would I say, to have and to push in a way where my kids won't struggle or myself, getting older. So obviously, in the previous masterclass, I did mention that I studied electrical engineering. It wasn't something that I was, wanting to do. Got into photography, made some money there, then pretty much found a way to invest in property in my early 20s. Yes, I've done the mistakes, for the first few years, but obviously aligned myself to not have those mistakes, through education, through books, through seminars. Obviously now, you have this masterclass, which I didn't have then, YouTube channel, which would have been great. Would have been in a different position now. But nevertheless, 20 years later, doing okay, doing well. And this is the information that I want to share with everyone, myself and Amanda. So at the beginning, you don't have to, do these mistakes from day one. Amanda?
Yeah, so my background's a little bit different. Dragan had to be a lot more independent than me in terms of sourcing information. And as he mentioned, it was in a landscape where there was no internet, there was no easily accessible information. So he had to go out and learn on the job. Whereas I'm quite fortunate, my parents were my teachers. I come from a family of investors, an extended family of investors and developers. So for me, it was ingrained in me from childhood. This is the path, follow it. No coercion at all, not much. Mum and dad, if you're watching. But it was very much an expected, I suppose, is probably a better word than coerced. It was an expected path. It was taken for granted that, at 21, you've had a couple of years out of high school. What are you doing with your money? What have you got to show for it? And there was that pressure from a very young age. What have you got to show for it? You can't spend your 20s stuffing around, buy property. That's not to say that I didn't still stuff around. I wasn't the model daughter, but I did buy property. That was one box I did tick, and I got the itch to keep going. I bought the first one. I freaked out because, again, I'm going to use coercion again. I did not have a choice. I still remember there was a unit in Parramatta. My dad took me there. It was a unit in Parramatta where he was on the committee. So he knew the building inside out. So he's like, just buy one in there because we know it. It's a good one to get your feet wet. And I remember meeting the real estate agent and, obviously him and dad knew each other and connections and all of that. And I'm signing this contract at 21 years old. I had no idea what I was signing. I did it because I was told to. I didn't have any understanding of what I was doing. And dad basically said to me, learn as you go. Just buy it and learn as you go. So I sort of did the reverse journey to Dragan, where Dragan information gathered, he educated himself, whereas I was sort of thrown in the deep end of the pool and left to drown. But fortunately, I learned to swim. Hey?
You didn't drown.
No, I learned to swim. You have to, right?
That's
you
right.
have to.
Sometimes it's the best way.
It was for me. It was for me because I didn't have the drive
with someone backing you. I mean, that kind of like a mentor.
100%.
Right? And
I didn't have the, it would have taken me quite a few more years to get there on my own. I would have got there eventually, but to get there on my own, I might have lost, a decade of capital growth. I would have lost time, and time is the greatest resource here. So dad's methods were very parental. Try and find a mentor that's maybe a bit kinder. But generally, I credit my parents and having it ingrained in me from such a young age. So because of that, I didn't make a lot of those early mistakes that a lot of investors can make. I did have access to information. A lot of it was anecdotal. Granted, it wasn't data driven. It was family anecdotes. This person did this, that worked for them. But again, it got me started. And then once I had that itch, as I mentioned before, after buying the first one, you get hungry. That's when I started deep diving in the information gathering. That passion grew. Even though at the time I was working as a teacher, I'm a high school English teacher, or at the time I was a high school English teacher, I still had my day job, but that hunger in me was growing, and it became a ball rolling down a hill, and it gained momentum, and I kept going. So my journey is very different to Dragan's, but as long as you get where you need to go, it doesn't matter how you get there.
That's right. Exactly.
So today we're looking at buying established homes in established suburbs. So not the first owner of a property. You're not buying off the plan. You're not buying something newly built. It's something, a few years old. Got some pictures there as examples. So not new, not off the plan. So buying established, we're going to go through 5 reasons why we support purchasing established properties over purchasing off the plan or brand new. So it's a good idea to watch the other masterclass on purchasing brand new and off the plan, because we might make reference to it here, because we're now providing the counter arguments in support of purchasing established. So the biggest advantage of purchasing established is that you know what you're getting. It's already built. It's already been lived in. You already know the street, how busy it is, the good pockets, the bad pockets. You can walk through the property. You can check out the neighbours. You know the size and the quality of the development. If you're buying in a master plan community, you're kind of buying a little bit blind because it's not built yet. Which streets are the good streets, which streets are the dodgy streets, which streets have all the renters, which streets have all the owner-occupiers.
And the real value.
And the value, that's right. You can see, which roads become the thoroughfare roads, which roads become the congested roads. You don't know that until people are using those spaces. You also have an awareness of scarcity when you're buying established. When you buy a brand new or off the plan, everything's released to the market at the same time. So you get the FOMO, but you don't really know the scarcity. You don't really know the demand of that until it becomes established and the vibe of the area becomes established.
Yeah.
So if you're buying off the plan, you're gambling to a degree on what it's going to become. You're buying a vision, and they'll always present that vision very favorably, but you don't know until it's lived, until that development is lived in. Buying established, it's lived. You know your costs up front. Even things like rates, water, electricity, if strata fees apply, special levies. We always say if you buy a unit, don't buy anything with pools or lifts because your strata goes up. You want, what do they say? The typical red brick walk up is the investor's dream.
Yeah.
You're not getting those off the plan. They're long gone. You got to buy established if you want those. And then, of course, traffic and access. How busy is the street really? So buying established, you are in a better position to do better due diligence. You can get your building and pest report. You can walk through the property. If you're an investor, due diligence should be your middle name. So why you would lock yourself out of the opportunity to do your due diligence by buying off the plan is counterintuitive to the point of investing. Buying established gives you every opportunity to do every little bit of due diligence that you need to do to make a good purchase. So don't forfeit or short sell yourself out of the opportunity to do that due diligence, which leads us into reason 2. You have more control. When you are buying established, you have more control. People think they have more control buying off the plan because they might get to choose the fittings or the fixtures or the inclusions or the floor plan or whatever. It's an illusion of control. You're still purchasing marketing, right? Whether the walls are that grey or that grey, the renters don't care. At the end of the day, renters don't care. What you want control over is the things that matter for your bottom line. You want control over purchase price, for example. When you're buying off the plan, the developer's got the entire length of time it takes for construction to sell those properties. He's not desperate. He's not desperate for your sale. He'll stick firm to his price and go, well, this is the price of lot 1, this is the price of lot 2, and you're just buying off a catalogue. There's no negotiation. If you want control over price, you buy established and you adapt your negotiation strategies to that vendor and their situation through their real estate agent or through your buyer's agent if you want to be represented as well. If you want control over price and negotiations, off the plan won't offer you that, established will. Who determines the supply? If you're buying off the plan, the developer will release in stages. So he can create false scarcity and determine supply. When you're buying in an open market in an established area, the supply is determined literally by the market. It's real because it's market driven, not developer controlled with release in stages. So if you want to know how in demand an area really is, you want to watch that market for a few months first, right? As part of your due diligence. So if you're studying a market that already exists, then you can determine the trends that exist within that market. If you're buying off the plan, again, you're gambling, you're guessing what that market's going to do. It hasn't done it yet because it doesn't exist yet.
That's right.
So you're gambling. Who determines demand? Same thing. The way the developer markets it. Who's he targeting? What's he doing? Again, if he wants to tighten up supply, he can increase demand. So if he can see, I've released too much, I'm going to pull it back a bit, he'll pull it back a bit. He'll control demand and play psychological marketing tricks on you, not because the stock is superior, but because he's got control of the release of it, because however long it takes to construct is how long he's got to sell. That's a long time. There's no desperation. None. You have no power in that negotiation. Who determines the resale? So we talked about deeds of nomination and on-sell clauses in our other masterclass. I do suggest if you're interested in buying off the plan that you watch that, in particular the bits where we talk about on-selling off the plan contracts, because we talked about where if prices rise, people think buying off the plan is they get the capital growth in between signing up and then settling because the market will grow. The thing is, when markets grow, interest rates go up as well because you've got to curb that growth. So when prices go up, interest rates go up. When interest rates go up, lending tightens, loans are harder to get. So there's all that capital growth there, absolutely. But can you still settle at the higher interest rate that follows?
Yep.
That's where people get unstuck. The only way to protect yourself against that and still collect your capital growth, because if you don't have finance, you can't settle, you got to pull out of the sale, or you on-sell the contract through a deed of nomination. It's where you go, okay, I can't settle, so I'm going to sell the contract. You're not selling the property, you're selling the contract to purchase the property. So you still make the capital growth and pay the tax. You still make the capital growth without having to secure the finance. So if developers are permitting those on-sell clauses, then who is determining the resale prices? What developer would allow the open market to determine resale prices in a flooded market when all these properties suddenly can't settle because lending has tightened? They're not going to give that power to the market because it exposes their development. The only way this works for you is if you're the only person that negotiates in a deed of nomination. And if you're the only person that negotiates, then it means they're not selling that development anyway, because they won't allow that if they've got demand. So it's already a red flag if they permit it, because it means they need you. It means they're not selling. If you've got the deed of nomination, that's great, but it means the demand isn't there. If you don't have the deed of nomination, then if interest rates go up, you can't settle. So regardless, you lose. So people think, oh, well, if it doesn't work, I'll sell it. You can only sell it if you can settle it. If you can't settle it, then you lose your deposit and you pull out of the sale altogether. And then the market's gone up and you've missed out on buying because the market's moved when you bought 3 years ago instead of now.
Yep.
So you don't want to get caught up in that. Buying established allows you to do your due diligence in real time, determine trends, measure the market, determine value, know what you're willing to pay, know what you're buying because it exists, and get it right the first time.
I mean, all the data is there for you.
Correct.
You know what sold just down the road that's a very similar property 2 months ago where another one sold 3 months ago, and you pretty much can work out the value of yours.
You've got comparables.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You work out what the vacancy rate is, time on the market, on sale, all of that sort of things. All the data is there for you. Then you can pull out a cost analysis, work out the council rates, insurance and water rates and all that sort of stuff with the high to a low rental average, and then work out what's, if you're a minus, negative, or a positive. So all that data is there for you in that time, in that real time.
Yeah, and it's not produced in marketing material and projections and speculation. You're not buying speculation, you're buying hard data.
Yeah.
With Off the Plan, it's projections and speculation, totally different thing.
Look, at the end of the day, anyone that's, that if they're selling something on a glossy brochure for you, you're paying more for it. So
you've got to pay for the marketing costs too, right? You've got to cover their costs.
And the person who's selling it to you, their commission as well.
That's right. Who's paying the commission? That's the person being represented.
Exactly.
Watch our main masterclass for a lesson on that. It's very eye-opening. If you are not paying the commission, you are not the client, you are not being represented.
Exactly.
Please watch that. If you are looking for discounts, know that those discounts come at a price. If you're not paying, you're not receiving. Very simple.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay.
So the next one here, does this look like you're in control? I've got their house and land packages. They all look the same, or, big strata block there Off the Plan. That is not the image of control over the market. That is a very, very, developer-controlled market, or, there's no scarcity. Look at that. That's not investment-grade stock. They're, maybe first home buyers, or, there's a market for that stock. It's not for investors.
Definitely not. Yeah.
No. Okay, so reason 3, market pockets can emerge. So purchasing new or Off the Plan, we said, is purchasing a vision, but how do you know what pockets or dynamics will emerge once the development is built and people move in? So I've got a whole bunch of questions there that you need to ask yourself. Which streets have the larger versus the smaller blocks? How will those differences attract a different type of buyer? What type of families or people are going to live in the ones on smaller blocks versus the larger blocks? How will that impact the demographic of the area? Which streets are likely to be the bad streets? Why? Is there a station nearby? Is there a shopping centre, a town centre, kids' parks? Which streets are going to be the bad streets? Which ones are going to be the good streets? What sort of demographic is buying into the area? Is it typically first home buyers? Is it typically retirees? Is it typically investors? Is it typically owner-occupiers? What type of area is it going to be? You're buying where you don't know the demographic. That's risky. You need to know what you're buying into. What proportion of renters versus owner-occupiers are there? If it's predominantly a rental area and, you might have issues with the upkeep of the houses, the area can look very old and very tired very quickly, and that will devalue it.
Yep.
Versus an area where you've got more owner-occupiers, they're more invested in the property themselves, they're more likely to look after it and take care of it. The area presents better, therefore it's worth more.
It keeps the value high.
Keeps the value.
That's right.
Is the local school established? Is it any good? If you're buying in a master plan community, odds are the schools are also going to be brand new, but they're not established. What's the reputation of the schools? We all know some suburbs fetch a premium because of the school catchment. What if this becomes a suburb where the school ends up being terrible and it devalues the area?
That's right. And I get a lot of people that tell me, well, that doesn't matter. I'm not going to live in it. It's just going to be investment property. But yes, what kind of renters are going to attract in that area will also determine how the value in the future is going to be for that property.
Correct. And we always say you want to attract long-term tenants. The best long-term tenants are those that are committed to a school catchment, because you know you're going to get the 13 years out of them while their kids are at that school.
Exactly.
So if you're in a bad school catchment, you limit your ability to get a long-term family living in that property, locking in your rent long-term. If you can get a good school catchment, you get longer-term tenants. Again, here you're gambling. We don't know what the school's going to be. It doesn't exist yet. It hasn't existed for long enough yet.
Yep.
So are you being sold a premium vision at a caviar price for a mediocre outcome? There are too many unknowns to invest in off the plan when you can invest established and you can answer every single one of those questions. Bang, 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 bang. And if you're really lazy, you can ring the real estate agent and get him to answer them for you. Hey, mate, what school catchment? Where are the larger blocks? Where are the bigger blocks? Where are the smaller blocks? Where do the renters live? You can outsource that. You can use a buyer's agent too. Because remember, the real estate agent represents the vendor. They're going to present all of that very favorably to you as well. Buyer's agent can check all those things for you to your best interest. So they can tell you, Dragan can tell you, this is what you should look for. This is what you should avoid. This is what you should go for. So off the plan, if you buy off the plan, you can't answer any of those questions because the answers don't exist. They will exist after you're committed, but they don't exist in that due diligence process. All right, reason 4, you still get the tax benefits. So buying brand new, people think that they get more tax advantages than if they buy established. Not true. We go into this in more detail in the other masterclass because there are some, I suppose, myths or misunderstandings around things like depreciation that we do go into in the other masterclass. We will touch on them here though. Buying established, first and foremost, does not mean that you forfeit your tax benefits. You still get your depreciation. Your depreciation applies on any investment property where the dwelling, the building, is less than 40 years old, or where any component of that dwelling is less than 40 years old. So if the house is 50 years old, but the kitchen is only 20 years old, you can still depreciate. The kitchen is a depreciable event, the value of that kitchen, for another 20 years until it's 40 years old. So everything expires at 40 years when it comes to depreciation. Anything under 40 years is depreciable at the full rate. So what that is 40 years, you depreciate 100%, so 2.5% per year, because land value goes up, dwelling value goes down because you've got wear and tear. So if the lifespan of a dwelling is 40 years, you lose 2.5% per year before you lose 100% of the value of that built structure.
That's right. So even if you purchased a house that was 40 years old and you decided to renovate the full house, you get depreciation over 40 years on that renovation.
Yeah. So anything under 40 years old is depreciable.
Yeah.
So if you buy brand new or off the plan, you get the full 40 years as opposed to 35 years or 30 years. But that little window of time, people think they're forfeiting their depreciation. You're not. You're forfeiting the number of years that have already been used up. Now, the logic then goes is, well, when a property is 40 years old, it's only worth land value. So imagine a suburb near you that's a 40-year-old suburb. The houses tend to be 40 years old. Most of them, or that suburb, would be regenerating with knockdown rebuilds, right? So a lot of houses would be selling at land value anyway, just like a house and land package. You're buying at land value anyway, but there is a dwelling on there that can collect rent until you're ready to knock down and rebuild when you've got the funds. And when you knock down and rebuild, you got your brand new property anyway. You got your 40-year depreciation clock restarted. but you've actually purchased established where the demographics are known, the unknowns are known. So you're getting all of the advantages, but you might buy in the 30th year at closer to land value, get your 10 years of growth because it might double in the 10 years. You use the equity to pay for the knockdown rebuild, and you are heads and shoulders better off.
That's right.
Because you're not paying it all at once either.
I'm also going to say even some of those houses back in the 70s and 80s were built much better
Better build
so
quality.
they're keeping the building and gutting out the whole house and doing a full renovation, keeping the actual the frame of the house, because it's better built than these some of these properties.
Yeah. And remember, the renovation is also depreciable as well. It doesn't have to be a new house. A house can be older than 40 years old and still depreciable, because anything within it that is under 40 years old is depreciable.
Any of the material.
Yeah, any of the that's right.
Yeah.
So new kitchens, bathrooms, flooring, etc., depreciable.
Yep.
Okay, so just be really aware that you are not forfeiting tax benefits if you are the second, third, fourth, fifth owner of the property. It's not assessed based on what owner you are. It's assessed based on the age of the property and the fixtures. Okay, be really where you are not forfeiting that. Same thing with negative gearing. So you still get, if you are an investor that invests, for negative gearing, you still get that on your established properties. Tax deductions for maintenance, which are different to capital works, you still get those. So there's no forfeiture of any of these tax benefits. With that said, if you're investing for tax purposes, then you're kind of doing it wrong, because we're investing to make money. We're not investing to avoid tax or minimize tax. So be aware that if the draw card of a particular investment for you is the tax benefits, make sure that the investment itself is viable without the tax benefits being the factor that makes it viable. If the tax benefits are the factor that makes it viable, then the investment itself doesn't pass muster. So please be really, really aware of that. Okay, so this next slide just reiterates what we said, and it is a question that comes up a lot, which is why we want to really emphasize this point. And it's always the same phrasing that we get. So I don't know where people are getting this from, but they come to us going, if I'm the second owner, I don't get the benefit. And they use this term second owner. And I don't know where they're getting this phrase, but it doesn't matter. If you're the first owner, the second owner, the third owner, it doesn't matter if the dwelling is less than 40 years old or components of the dwelling are less than 40 years old. There's a possible reason why it matters, and that's if you're buying off the plan and they inflate the build contract price to make that 2.5% proportion bigger. We go into that in the other masterclass. That's a possible explanation for this perceived benefit. It's not real. Watch the other masterclass if you're getting sucked into that rabbit hole. But otherwise, you do get your 40 years. I just want to be clear on that, because we get asked a lot, if I'm the second owner, I don't get depreciation. Yes, you do. It's 2.5% for 40 years. So if the build cost is $600,000, then 2.5% of that is $15,000 every year off your tax return, off your taxable income every year for 40 years. $15,000 every year, no matter if you're the first owner, the second owner, the third owner, the 10th owner. Taxman doesn't care. He does not care. It's the age of the property that matters. All right, buying established, reason number 5, my favorite one, value add potential. When you buy brand new off the plan, you're buying a vision. You're buying something at the peak of its potential, because they're selling you this wham bam, thank you ma'am, beautiful, brand new, oh my God, it's so shiny and amazing. They're selling you something at the peak of its value cycle. They're selling you a vision. When you buy established, you're buying potential. You're not paying for something that's already realized its potential. You're buying the diamond in the rough, the one that's going to reveal its potential and its value, because you are going to perfectly polish that diamond into the beautiful shiny thing that it can be. So when we buy brand new, we're buying at the top of the growth cycle. Is there an opportunity to renovate? No. Can we do any landscaping or cleanup works? No, that's brand new as well. Can we maybe add value with an extension? Maybe chuck an extra bedroom on, a structural reno or cosmetic? No, that's all brand new as well. There's nothing to do. to that property to add value to it. You've paid, quite literally, you've paid somebody else to do that for you. You've outsourced your own capital growth to somebody else who's collected that profit, and you've bought that property at the top of its growth cycle by buying it brand new off the plan. There's nowhere to improve that property when you've bought it at its peak, which is when it's brand new. It's like buying a new car out of the showroom.
Exactly.
Peak, right?
Yep. As soon as you drive out, price.
Exactly. Whereas if you buy something that's established,
Yeah.
you're not paying overs for something at its peak. You're buying something that's below its peak for a discount, and then you are bringing it to its peak through, say, a renovation, or through a knockdown rebuild, or through, adding value in some particular way. Okay? If you're buying something at the peak of its growth cycle, then you don't benefit from that purchase until the market gives you the growth. And, market cycles, no matter what you buy. So why would you not take the growth from the market and your value adding? Because you get market growth no matter what you buy. When the tide rises, all ships rise.
That's right.
So market growth, again, if that's the driving force, you get that no matter what. So why lock yourself out of the value add growth when you're buying potential, and then you add the value to that property through renovations and so on?
Manufactured growth.
Correct.
Yeah.
You're forcing growth when the market's not handing it to you on a silver platter.
That's right.
So should you purchase established or new, we are both very much in agreement that purchasing established wins every single time.
Yeah.
Because you can add value with renovations. You can buy for land value if you're buying something older in an older suburb, knock down, rebuild it later. Cheaper entry price, you're not paying a developer's premium, you're not paying a premium for brand new. You tend to get larger blocks of land when you're buying it in established suburbs. So you might even have future subdivision potential, or maybe a duplex. When you knock down and rebuild, you might be able to get 2 incomes.
That's right.
When you improve the value. You can't get that on these little boxy house and land packages.
Yeah, too small.
Yeah. You're not forfeiting your tax benefits, so you get those anyway.
Yeah.
You're not gambling on unknowns. You can actually do your due diligence and do your homework and get the information before committing to a purchase.
All the data is there for you to see.
Yeah,
So
there's no gamble.
My guess.
Investing is not gambling. If you want to gamble, go to the casino.
Don't recommend it.
Don't recommend it, but it's the same thing.
Yeah.
Might as well, right?
Yeah.
Knowing up front what you're buying, your due diligence, that's the biggest one. That should be at the top.
Yeah.
You're knowing what you're buying, right? You wouldn't buy anything else without doing the research on it, right? What are big things people, I don't know, at my age, people looking at prams and mum cars and soccer mum cars. Like, you wouldn't buy a car without comparing different makes, different models, different dealers, you just wouldn't. I don't understand how people can spend up to $1 million or more, whatever, the most expensive thing they ever buy, and they're literally buying something that doesn't exist yet. Like, listen to that. Doesn't make sense. Especially when it's for investment purposes. If you're living in it and you've got a particular affinity to that area or that particular thing, fine. But it's for the purpose of making an income. You are actively investing in something that you don't know, can't know, more importantly. Not that you don't know, that you can't know. You don't have access to that information. It doesn't exist. It doesn't make sense. It's not a smart investment strategy. Even if the market goes up, you still got to settle. The market goes up, interest rates go up, lending tightens. Even if the market goes up, can you still settle without having to unsell the contract or forfeit altogether, lose your deposit? It just doesn't stack. And then, of course, the last one there, control over price, supply, demand, scarcity. You are not in control when you are buying volume-built, You are not in control when you are buying volume-built stock. There's no scarcity when the developers just, conveyor belt.
That's right.
Chucking them into the market and flooding the market. And remember, the developer's protected from flooding the market because they've sold them in their pre-sales through the construction stage, releasing them in stages. So the developers had complete control over running these cabs off the rank, but they all settle together. So you won't find a renter when everyone's looking for a renter at the same time. The market's flooded. Developer's taken his money, he's gone. You are the one stuck holding that can. So please be very, very mindful of purchasing new versus established. For us, the very, very clear winner is to purchase established.
Definitely.
But for your information, please do watch both masterclasses so you can do a fair compare and contrast between both for yourself.
Definitely. And guys, I recommend after watching the masterclass, if you have any further questions, please book in a call. The QR code is going to be up here now. Feel free to scan the QR code, book a session. Let's have a chat, even if it's, you're thinking about investing, not sure what to do, where to go, which direction to take. Of course, these masterclasses are going to be very informative, but I'm sure there's going to be other questions out there.
And the information will be more personalized.
Exactly. So, we can strategize to your goal, which is very important. I always recommend everyone have a clear indication of where they want to go and where they want to be in a certain time. But again, if you're not sure, book a call in, let's discuss. You can also jump onto propertysessions.com.au/15. Book a call with me. You'll be having a chat with me direct, and we can take it from there.
Yeah, definitely try and catch as many of our spotlight masterclasses as you can to information gather, but also remember they are all general in nature. So do you want that personalized advice?
Yep.
Here's the man to talk to.
Have a chat with me. Guys, thank you, Amanda, and thanks for joining this masterclass, and there'll be more to come. Thank you.
Thank you.